We're back in the tackle room again, and today we're talking about 3 simple tips that help me save my summer fishing. You don't want to miss this one. Stick around.
There we go. Oh crap, holy cow. That's a nice one.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to lowbrow fishing. And anyone can tell you, summer fishing can be a real drag. Temperatures here have soared well over 100 degrees and will be so until late September. It's just the way it is. But we can still have success on the water as long as we keep our wits about us and make sure that we get the slop out of the boat like we talked about before. Now is the time to bring your A game. But there's not all bad news. There are some simple, easy to do tips that I found that have really helped me get my productivity and number of bites way up through the roof. And they're just so easy to do. They're sort of no-brainers, but a lot of times we forget to think about these things. Well, what are they? Well, first and foremost, you got to go where the bass are. I know, it seems ridiculously simple, but a lot of times we chase shadows. We get it in our heads that bass are going to be out on a main lake point or out under a bunch of docks, or they're going to be here or there. And a lot of times they just aren't there. Or if they are, they have lockjaw and they're not biting. Now, reasons for this can be extremely varied. A lot of times it can come down to fishing pressure, lake pressure, how much pleasure boat traffic there is, how much swimming, fishing, how much, school's out, kids are out there having fun. But a lot of times that is going to interfere with the fishing, especially during the day. At night, those bass will generally open up a little bit and it can be easier to get a bite. That's why I do most of my fishing at night in the summertime. But what if that's not an option for you? What if going fishing at night just isn't an option for you? You don't have the gear for it. You don't have the schedule for it. What if you're forced to go during the day? Well, as I said, you've got to go where the bass are. And that might sound stupidly simple, but think about it for a second. When it comes to fishing pressure and boating pressure, those bass tend to vacate those areas. We've seen studies where they've done this, putting trackers on fish. And in areas where there's a lot of fishing pressure, a lot of boat pressure, a lot of times those fish will leave that area. There was a study done recently on Toledo Bend that spells that out fairly clearly. So they're going to more quiet pockets. They're going to areas of the lake. Nobody's fishing. So those are the areas of the lake that you need to seek out. A lot of times they're very accessible from the bank. See, on my lake, there is just so much boating traffic. They are on top of each other with jet skiers, personal watercraft, pontoons, tubers, water skiers, and just pleasure boats having a good time. Well, that's fine and everything. They're entitled to be out there, but it messes with the fishing. It makes it very hard, especially when you've got people in boats zooming around you and you're just trying to fish, trying to relax. So what do? Well, like I said, you find a spot of the lake where those things are not happening. And for me, that's the area of the lake that is to the north. You've heard me say it in the videos when I'm on the little boat, sometimes even when I'm on the bass buggy. You talk about me heading north. Well, that's what I do. The fish are normally grouped up in a deeper area to the south. And the bottom's a little bit hard. There's vegetation, weed lines there. There's places for the fish to feed, the brim and the shad. That's where they congregate. But again, that gets a lot of boat traffic, so it sends the entire fish population, bait fish and everything up north. Now, the good thing is that water is all to myself. Every time I go, I have that water all to myself. The bad thing is it is choked with hydrilla. It's only about 4 feet deep, and it is very hard to get around. It's very hard to fish. You're not bringing a crankbait through there. You're going to be fishing with something that is weedless, something like a swim jig or something like a Texas rig or something of that nature. You're not burning a crankbait through there. So your fishing options are limited. But again, rule number one, you have to go where those fish are.
Oh, there, I got him. He hit it pretty good, too. Yeah, just dragging a worm. That one feels okay. Doesn't feel great. It feels okay. Ooh, he's fighting. Ooh, that's actually a pretty good one.
That's a big one.
That's a catfish.
That's what it might have been that I was thinking.
That's a big honking stinking catfish.
It is. Do you need tools?
Oh, let me see. That's a great big old... Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Well, he went after it. Let me see if I can get this guy. No, don't you flip. Don't you flip. Don't you flip. That is a great big old... What kind of catfish is that? That's, oh heck. Flathead. There we go. Alright. Look at that thing.
Yep.
Great big old flathead catfish. That's, I don't know, 3 pounds.
Yeah, it's nice.
Right in that area, so. There you go, dude. And down he goes.
Now, the second thing we've got to consider, again, is another one of those ridiculously obvious things that we, in our confusion, in our frustration, that we often leave behind. And that is, base your presentations and your baits on bass behavior. Again, it seems very simple, doesn't it? We want to throw what those bass are going to bite. By this time of the year, they have seen everything. They've seen every worm, they've seen every jig, they've seen every crankbait, they've seen every spinnerbait and buzzbait and popper and spook, and they've seen it all, right? So you have got to be very selective about what it is you're going to throw. It's very important. Again, this time of year is fishing on hard mode. Think about it. You see those bass busting up on shad. You may not want to be throwing a bottom bouncing bait. If you're seeing the bass busting up on shad, you might want to do something that would interest them higher up in the water column. Perhaps something like a shaky head, or even higher, something like a small spinnerbait, or even higher, something like a weightless fluke or a floating worm, something in that area, Try to key in on what it is that those bass are after and put your baits out there accordingly. Use those baits based on how they are reacting. If the water's very warm and you know that the bass are very deep, obviously you want to go along the bottom. You want to use jigs and Texas rigs and shaky heads and Carolina rigs. You want to use those bottom bouncing techniques. So don't just guess. Use the areas and the conditions and what's going on around you. Base your colors that you're using on water clarity and weather. Is it a clear sky? Is it a cloudy sky? Do we have a lot of wind? Do we have no wind? And use that to pick the colors. Whether you're going to be throwing green pumpkin, whether you're going to be throwing something like June bug, or whether you're going to be throwing something like, Dayglow, methylate, or even pink. So make sure that bass behavior is at the forefront of your mind. Once you've located a little private secluded area that's, that you have, that you can actually do some fishing to, that doesn't have a whole bunch of boating traffic. Because I tell you, on every single lake, there is a place where the boaters just don't go. It may be the nastiest place. It may be having a lot of the slop. But once you find that place, that's where the fish are going to be most of the time. Watch their behavior. Look at the area, look at the conditions, and then base your bait presentations on that. And I know it sounds really, really simple, but we can get so frustrated when we're not getting bites. We really do have to go back to basics. And a lot of times, anglers can forget to do that.
I got him. That one's not bad, hon. Yep. Get out of that grass. Oh, he's wanting to dig. Come here, you. I had a feeling. Yeah, I had him good. Uh-huh. I'm gonna put a little chatterbait on for you. Can you crank and wind? I had a feeling that was, yeah, don't you fall in the water. Pound and a quarter? Pound and a quarter. Ain't seen one of them in a while, have we? Alright, so chatterbait. Chatterbait. Thank you, little dude. I'm not even gonna, we're gonna say pound and a quarter. And I am recording. Alright, little dude. Thank you.
Okay, so as we talked about, we found an isolated pocket of the lake, and we know the bass are in there. Very good. Now, we're watching, and we know, based on what we're seeing, based on the conditions, we've got a good idea what those bass are interested in. Thirdly, this is probably something that a lot of guys don't ever think about, but it's very crucial to tie everything together and essentially make it your own, right? Because as we've said a lot of times, the best way to get consistent bites, quality bites, is to show those bass something different, something that's enticing to them, but at the same time, not something that they've ever seen before. Remember, bass are very curious creatures. They will be interested in a lot of things that would surprise you. So what do? Well, obviously I do stuff like makeup, freak rigs, and Waco rigs. But today, actually, I did something a little bit outside the box, and that was, started out throwing this guy here. You guys have seen me throw this before. This is just the baby Carolina, right? It's got a 1/4 bullet weight with a bobber stop on either side to a Texas rigged worm. And that's just an easy, really down and dirty way for me to throw together a Carolina rig that I can fish through really thick hydrilla, really thick slop. And you guys, if you've been here long enough, you remember that I did an entire video about the baby Carolina rig last year, and I'll put a link to that video in the description. But another thing that I did that was kind of outside of the box is I had this 3/8 ounce slobber knocker, right? A bladed jig. And if you've been around here long enough, you know that I'm throwing these with a fluke style bait. I've got a Zoom super fluke on here, but I also like to use a caffeine shad or a cream fluke. Anything that has that fluke twin fork style tail on it. Something like a Kitech or a Rage Swimmer, while they're great swim baits, they're not very good chatterbait trailers because they will impede the hunting action of that bait, and it'll go from darting all over the place to going in a straight line, and that's not what you want. I've heard guys talk about, I don't get many bites on a bladed jig. I guarantee you that's why. Change your trailer route and change how you fish it. But that's what I did today, is I took this slobber knocker and I threw it in that thick hydrilla. I'm talking places you would normally punch, which is a place that I would normally punch, some place that I would normally have my flipping stick. But I threw this there, and this swims through the grass exceptionally well. And this was my best producer today for generating bites because those fish were chasing bait fish. The bass were busting on shad, they were busting on bluegill, and I saw that. I decided, I need to throw something they're interested in, right? That was part 2 of what we talked about. And using this, well, I got a little bit inventive, decided to think outside the box, and I was rewarded with some really nice fish. It's something we can't be afraid to do. Now, sometimes what everybody's using is the right thing because it works. But a lot of times, the fish will get burnt out on that. And even if they're not burnt out on that, it's always good to have something in your back pocket to show those fish something different. So, like I said, don't be afraid to get inventive. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. So there you have it. 3 simple tips to elevate your summer fishing game. Probably work all year long, but they will really shine for you, especially during the summer. Find a secluded spot if you can that's got fish that are not as pressured. Base the baits that you throw on bass behavior and the conditions around you. And don't be afraid to get a little bit inventive. Using that method and that process, I'm sure not only will you get more bites this summer, but you'll get more quality bites this summer. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.